Recording in progress. Okay, so we're recording right now. I noticed that when I have the microphone close to my mouth,
yes.
I breathe into it and you can hear my breath. I tested it before, so I've kind of moved it away from my mouth. And I'm hoping once I play it back to myself, I can hear my voice without the breathiness of my voice. So
that is a quandary with some recorded systems. You know, it happens with quite a few.
Yeah. Hey, I want to say that I began writing a poem for our Sentience project.
Wonderful.
And I'm really up and at them right now, just kind of going at it, struggling with it, and having a handle with it at the same time. It's wonderful.
Oh, lovely. Absolutely lovely. Yeah. I mean, the other artist contacted me back. Jo's going to be part of it, and she was telling me she's going to do something, textural, art-based visual art, that is. George wants me to meet up with him, and he wants to do something performative-based and probably, like a painting as well. Lucia, she has been doing ink drawings, and that type of thing. Me, although I proposed the idea, I've still got to conceive something. Which is quite typical. I sort of get it done at the last minute, kick myself up the arse. Pardon my French.
Definitely. And I think about the word sentience, and it's a word you've been using for quite some time, for as long as I've known you, and this happens to be our 20th year of having been. It's amazing, isn't it? It's our 20th year.
God, where's time gone?
It's amazing.
I know.
And
it's just flown over.
It's amazing, But the word sentience is a word you've been using for quite some time, and it's nice now that you and I can get to a point where we can address the subject in the format of making art.
Yes.
Because given our discourses, we never got to the point where we actually broached that subject and made art based on it.
Yes.
So this would be a chance for us to address that officially,
I agree with you, and I think now with the way the world has gone, I think it's even more pertinent now than any other time. It's because pussycat. Sorry, the cat was. He wants to play. That's what it is. It's just with the way the world has gone now. I'm a big believer in this, and like live and let live, and that type of thing. But in the world, it comes with responsibility and accountability. It doesn't matter who we are, what walk of life we come from. Everything we do, carries that forward.
Yeah.
So, and as you know, I ended up campaigning on human rights as well for a few years, and children's rights. And I think that really motivated me to do with, people's responsibility, because my stance, I'm actually a lot of people get surprised by this. I'm quite a traditionalist, Oh, you awful pussycat, come here. Sorry. Yes, in the sense, the family unit is the bedrock of society, and there seems to be like an absolute deconstruction of it now, as if, the family unit is the enemy, so to speak, and it's not, because none of us would be here without it.
Yeah, it's true.
So
it's true, and that's why I value my family so much. Given where I am in my life, I'm a bit older now, and much older now, and I've spent the past 10 years before the past 10 years, just out in the world, out slaying dragons, out. It's being a wild animal, and I was combining the artwork with a lot of hustling, basically, to put it mildly. And I'm at a point now where I've made my friends and enemies. I've lived my life, and I want to just kind of come back to the family and make peace with the family. And given situations of brother to brother relationships, mother to son, father to son, son to father,
Yes.
son to mother, I'm at a space now where I'm at peace with everything. And
Yes.
I wanted to ask you though, given the subject of sentience and hearing you talk about it right now, you were talking in terms of the human bonding, the idea of family, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about sentience and writing my poem in terms of the conscience, in terms of going beyond, or even not reaching that aspect of humanity, but the kind of distinction with the mindset and how it transforms within society. Not so much human bonding, but dealing with the energy within spaces, how that adds turmoil or dissonance or balance or rhythm. The idea of awareness without relating it to humanity, you know? And that's what I'm trying to express in my poem. Not versing more about humanity and people.
Yes.
Also the mindset. How the mindset can be healed given the energy within society, the trauma of the human experience.
Absolutely agree with you, because that itself is the human condition,
Right.
And you mentioned about the turmoil versus, like the mindset and, human interaction. And chaos itself is, how can I put this? You have some systems, some ideologies in this world which use the word chaos, and they do not understand it. They do not understand it because chaos itself is part of balance. Okay? Some assume that chaos is a bad thing, but only if it's instigated. It's the motivation behind it, But when you look at the natural laws of chaos, it becomes something else. A good example to give, is the theory of, like the universe, Big Bang theory. Now everyone thinks the Big Bang's already happened, and the rest of the process, is everything's in place, and it's not. We're actually still in the process of the Big Bang, because everything in the cosmos is all pushing outwards, it's moving outwards. So we are still in, the process of it, basically. And we think because of our awareness, of time, by our mortality, we assume everything's going to be on the same, page as us. It doesn't necessarily go that way. Now, to do with like the Big Bang theory, within that you have chaos itself, and chaos is like a residue energy. Think about it like that. It exists all about us anyway. But you can have what's called like ordered chaos, in a sense, but it's such a small part though as well, but that small element, and in terms when you contrast it to the human condition, the humans themselves cause themselves more problems than need be. Do you know? And this thing where we are sentient, we are aware we exist. Our very breath, our very pulse, touch affirms it that we exist. But how people go about, with the sentience, they cause themselves loads of problems. So this is why I brought this project forward, because I think it's something that needs addressing. And it's like putting a mirror, in front of somebody, because people need to recognize that element in themselves. Another thing to do with it as well, a lot of people abandon their sentience. because they don't want to think for themselves, and they don't want to think because of things like fear. And then you've got like external factors and the ulterior motivation to propaganda, to hold the minds of the masses. So, and that itself disrupts that sentience, So again, like you stated yourself, it's to do with the mindset, but it's also to do with the external factors around, what is the motivation, on both ends of the scale, if you like, and that interaction. And, at the end of the day, it comes to what a person's aims are, at the end of the day, so anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Also, I think we live in a society where I think back on the pandemic and how the time afforded us being in the lockdown was to do that work, was to look at ourselves and say, hey, this is me now. I'm looking at myself. As you said, I put the mirror in front of us and look at ourselves and say, how can I better myself? What is the means of achieving greatness from the base of me, not by using other people? And the sentient being for me is somebody who looks at himself and says, how can I better myself? How can I become a better person? In order to love another person, I have to learn how to love myself. And that's the work I've been personally doing, is physical, mental, spiritual, intellectual, all these aspects. I'm putting it together to come up with a conclusion as to who am I really, and how do I fit into the society. And by fitting into the society, I have to learn to draw the parallel, the balance, and there's friction. How do I lessen that friction? If I'm bringing a problem to the bigger problem, there's no sense of balance. How do I bring a solution? How am I the difference in the overall picture of brotherhood and sisterhood and familial breakdowns and things of that nature? A lot of the work I'm doing right now is very spiritual. I think in terms of, watching the mass, going to church and everything. And the God factor is something that's very controversial because most people don't believe in that God factor. But I have to think beyond myself. I spoke to somebody recently and I said, hey, it's not about me. And he said, yeah, it's not about me. It's about other people.
Yes.
Bringing the love to other people.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, I want to ask you about, and I'll send you an email to further explore this.
Absolutely.
The basis of what we're doing right now is working out the technical detail, but also to get to the point of what to talk about in 2 weeks when we meet and officially set up the recording. Hopefully all the kinks are worked out and we have a wonderful conversation, and I send the video to Noah Becker. How do you want to address this conversation? What are the primary things you want to talk about? I can start by talking about how we met officially at the Echoes Gallery or via the telephone, but how do you want to address our conversation?
I think we do need a structure to work on so we're both on the same page. And I think obviously the initial introduction is going to have to be, the point of how we know each other professionally. You're in New York, I'm in England. So the other, I was thinking about this today. This is why I brought a book to write notes if need be while we're talking. And thematically, obviously, it needs to introduce what, a summary of what sentience means in a general scope, and then move on to it, on maybe exploring in discussion what, prior examples, not a lot of prior examples, but, visual and written dialogue, around that theme. So, but do each component, like short, brief, short and sharp, so to speak. And then the main body of it, move on to actually speak about your interpretation of it. and the avenue that you wish to go down, and also in context of myself as well. So an interactive conversation then in terms of that. So, and obviously the conclusion would be to speak about the final, outcome, where it's going to lead to.
Yeah, I think the problem we'll run into is that this is Noah Becker's art world, and fundamentally most of the podcast conversations are centered on the art practice, the examples of the art practice. For example, I got to know you through the Liverpool Biennial. What was or is your fundamental experience with the Liverpool Biennial? How did you get to be a part of the Liverpool Biennial? The artists you worked with, the galleries you worked with, so without getting too caught up on concepts of the kind of intellectualizing of art, it'll be more so fundamentally rooted basically on the basis of the art practice. And systematically, that's what we have to apply to the conversation. And I had a thought about, including George and Joe and Lucia, but this is going to be basically you as a centerpiece of all of that. And they can be branches to your tree by you voicing their opinions and thoughts for them.
Yeah.
And in a sense also, I would like to know more about the art scene in England.
Yes.
And how you are rooted in all of that. Your history as a functioning artist in the British art scene. Because what I am interested in knowing more about is your history as an artist. And I remember all your accomplishments are outstanding, and I would want to know more about that.
Well, basically, I'm going to let you lead on this, okay, professionally, because you know Noah Becker and what type of thing he likes, so to speak. So if you can email me like a structure, I will work with that, and yourself. It's so yeah, but I mean, from a professional standpoint, it depends where we speak about it, because my father was an artist. So
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But he did things like family portraits, portraits for other people, landscapes, but he was also in the armed forces, and he was a sign writer, in the Scots Guards. So that influence to do with visual arts has always been there, through my life. From my personal professional standpoint, I worked originally at 17 years old with a local poet, believe it or not.
Wow. It all comes full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah. And he said to me, would you do illustrations for some of his poems? And his poems were quite political, and that type of thing, because a lot of stuff going on in the world back then, it's not much has really changed, has it? But needless to say, as time went on, I got a normal job, I was engaged to be married, and like life, by the time I was in my mid to late 20s, everything changed. And I went for a career change, and it was one of three options, and I researched all three properly, thoroughly. One was to run away to a Buddhist temple.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously. The other one was to join, like the army. This is what I mean. It was all really different stuff. And the other one was to do a career change fully and go in for a degree as a mature student. So in my late 20s by that juncture point, and early 30s. And the art degree won, so,
Yeah.
And And the reason why it did, the Buddhist priest that I had conflab with, I said, give him loads of questions, and he would advise me accordingly. And I said to him, I said, when would I have to shave my head?
Yeah.
And he looked at me really strange, and he goes, you need to think properly, Gaynor, what it is you want. He said, because that question, he said, you don't really understand. And he said to me, what are you trying to run from? So that's another subject, that's a huge subject in itself. Yeah. And so when I had the...
It says our meeting will end in 10 minutes. I'm not sure why that is.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll quickly just tell you this part. When I went to the recruitment office for the army, I turned up with a long navy pencil skirt and navy jacket to go with it, and white blouse. My hair was in a French pleat, and I had big long red nails back then and high heels.
Yeah.
And when I walked in and looked at myself and everybody else about, I thought, this is not really the thing for me.
Yeah.
So I didn't go down that route. So I ended up in the arts, basically, and how come I ended up in like the big events like biennials and that type of thing. I got commissioned basically as an artist. That's how it started, and I got commissioned before I even graduated. So.
It's amazing. That's amazing, because the year 2003 was a very important year for me. I had done a lot of work in the theater world as a playwright and director, and I got from there to the Echo Gallery, and that's where I met you. So fundamentally, a lot was happening during that year with theater and the whole gender movement. I know we were big on gender. We were writing a lot about gender, and I got to ask you, what's your take on the gender movement now? We've come so far from what we were dealing with back in 2003.
What do I think about it now? I think it's lost its footing. I think it's lost focus. I think it's gone up the wall, and I think it's gone idiotic. Because I would probably offend a load of people now by saying this, where they've got loads of pronouns. It's not helping anyone. It's like a distraction, So, So anything in the gender and sexual politics over the decades that was accomplished post World War II is now being flushed down the toilet, because it really is like a distraction. So it's like it's gone. If you look at a lot of the writings in academia now, which are coming out of universities, it's more there's no substance to it, okay, and it's more opinionated rather than substantiated, to give a valued structure to the debate. And I think the debate has been lost. It's like it's been shattered into pieces. So anyway.
Yeah, I think it's become like a disease almost, kind of like an intellectual form of disease, and
I'd agree.
There's no format, there's no stability. It's just scattered all over the place. There's no adjoining theme that kind of balances everything. It's just kind of like all messed up. It's disturbing.
I absolutely agree with you there. It's like I said, anything that has been attained and achieved to some form of knowledge base, it's like the knowledge base itself now has been fractured, and it's almost like a form of controlled opposition, with the way it's disintegrating.
Yeah.
And I have had other artists where I've expressed my opinion where this disintegration's been happening, and they said, oh no, we disagree with you, because blah 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 blah, to do with the flow of the, like the political talk at the moment, to do with this. And I said to them, you're speaking to the wrong one.
Yeah.
I said, because in my own art career, I've also done art criticism and writing, with other people, and to explore, the diversification in the actual correct context, in other factors that come into the subject and, like shape it. And I said, you can't say that, because the next thing they tried to suggest I was like anti, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're actually shooting the ones, you know,
Yeah.
who, you know, like at the forefront, and the debate on these subjects like decades back. So it's bizarre. I think the whole thing's gone bizarre.
And I'm not sure what the primary cause of it all was. I mean, there was a level of basically leveling. Everything was leveling out basically back when we were talking about all sorts of things in the early 2000s. But you got to a certain point where everything became commercialized, you know, and that kind of ruined everything. You know, I think it's just kind of the powers that be trying to find different ways to talk about the subject matter of gender, you know, and it's the academicizing of it as well. You know, it's not just kind of what's on the street, you know, how people identify themselves to be. It's just kind of the powers that be trying to instigate something, trying to feel something beyond the sense of I am this, I am that. It's the overall commercializing of the whole thing, you know. That's a problem.
I absolutely agree with you with that. You will notice in the structures of, you know, like academia, and if you, as the saying goes, you know, follow the money, if you study where the funding is coming from, and you look at those people, you know, the power players who have control of the money, and they are stepping into academia and they are saying, like, we want these themes in this context, you know, like only being funded. So it's basically pandering to a group of people globally, you know, who want, you know, the socio-political and economic structures that go into this, like a feedback on it. So yeah, it's very much heavily controlled by money. Money is dictating and shaping a lot of it. So when you said like the commodifying of it, you know, like you know, it's very much true. You know, right across the plateau of it.
But Gaynor, we are free people now, you and I. You know, there's a level of freedom that comes to being who we are. We're mature now. We're advanced in certain ways. Yes. Mature, but I'm still a 12-year-old at heart. You know?
Yeah, totally empathize.
You know what
really
I mean?
Do empathize.
I'm a silly boy most of the time. You know.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I was thinking about, you know, that subject recently as well. You know, being like 55 years old now, and well, I think where's time gone, which is the first thing.
Yeah.
Second thing is, I think I still feel like 21.
Yeah.
I really do. It's so, because in a lot of ways I have matured and I have evolved, you know, and that type of thing. And most people do as they get older. But also my zeal and my energy is still the same, because I'm still hungry for life. I still, you know.
Yeah.
And you do become, I would say, I was speaking to another artist, this is going back about 15 years ago, and because I was older than them back then, I noticed in my 30s I became quite introspective back then, so, you know, like post 35, and then 40s a bit more so, and 40s I would rather say, like, not caring about anyone else's opinion of me.
Yeah.
But then again, I think there's always been an element of that in myself. So
yeah, I think there was also a time in our lives when we were basically like the character with the sword or the wand or the laser beam that kind of went into the world to try to conquer as much as we could.
Yes.
But we're at a point in time where it's like we're sitting in a rocking chair in our backyard and counting the pigeons and looking at the squirrels and the acorns, you know, we've kind of come full circle in so many ways. We've kind of made peace with a lot of different things. So I'm happy where I am, and I'm thankful that you and I have gotten to the point where we're working together again, and hope to see more of this kind of take shape and, you know, see where else we could go. But right now it's sentience, right? That's what we're talking
Sentience,
about.
yeah.
Sentience. Okay, I want to end here, but I'm going to shape everything, come up with a nice scheduling of what I want to talk about, and
Thank you.
kind of gear us in a certain direction where I think given 40 minutes to an hour, we'll have something well said and talked about, and I can send it to Rebecca, and we'll be fine. So
okay, wonderful.
Yeah, so I bid you a good evening, Gaynor Sweeney, and
au revoir to you too.